The Palm Grove Mall shimmered under Miami's twilight, its glass facade a kaleidoscope of neon and starlight, reflecting the city's restless pulse. A sprawling cathedral of luxury, the mall drew the elite, tech entrepreneurs, cruise line tourists, and Coral Gables socialites, its marble floors and designer boutiques a playground for wealth. On this December evening in 2023, the holiday rush was a fever pitch, the air thick with the scent of cinnamon pretzels and the jingle of festive Muzak. The VIP parking lot, a gated enclave of gleaming Mercedes, BMWs, and Teslas, was a battleground of privilege where rules bent under the weight of entitlement and order hung by a thread. Carlos Rivera, 42, stood at the lot's entrance, his security badge glinting under the sodium lights, his Navy uniform crisp despite the humid heat that clung to his skin. A Puerto Rican American from Hialeah, Carlos was a veteran guard with 15 years at the mall, his broad shoulders and steady brown eyes a quiet deterrent to chaos. Raised by a single mother who cleaned houses to pay the rent, he'd learned early that respect was earned through work, not wealth. His job, keeping the lot orderly, enforcing parking rules, was thankless, but Carlos took pride in it, his clipboard and flashlight tools of a man who believed in fairness, in a world where rules applied to all. Tonight, though, fairness was under siege. The lot a gridlock of impatient drivers and misplaced SUVs, each one a test of his resolve. The holiday season had turned the mall into a circus, the VIP lot a microcosm of entitlement. Carlos navigated the rows, his boots crunching on gravel, his radio crackling with updates from his team, Miguel at the East Gate, Juan prepping the tow truck in the service bay. Cars jockeyed for spaces, their horns blaring like trumpets, while shoppers in Gucci sunglasses and Prada heels ignored the painted lines, their vehicles sprawled across handicapped spots or blocking exits. Carlos had seen it all. Yacht brokers arguing over their spaces, influencers demanding valet service for their rented Lambos. But tonight's chaos was a beast, the lot a tangle of chrome and egos, each driver convinced they were the exception to every rule. He spotted the problem immediately. A black Range Rover, parked diagonally across two spaces, its rear end jutting into a narrow lane, forcing a silver BMW to inch past with a screech of tires, the driver's curses muffled by tinted glass. Carlos sighed, his clipboard heavy in his hand, the weight of another long shift pressing down. He approached the SUV, his flashlight sweeping the tinted windows, its beam catching the gleam of polished rims. The driver, a woman in her 50s, sat inside, her phone pressed to her ear, her designer dress, a simple but elegant navy sheath, catching the light as she gestured animatedly. Carlos tapped the window, his knuckles firm but polite, and waited as she lowered it, her perfume wafting out, sharp and floral, like money distilled into scent. "Ma'am," he said, his voice steady, his Miami accent softened by years of customer service. "You're parked incorrectly. This is a VIP lot, and your vehicle's blocking the lane. Please move it to a proper space now." The woman glanced at him, her green eyes narrowing, her blonde hair pulled into a sleek bun that spoke of boardrooms and power lunches. She didn't end her call, her voice sharp as she spoke into the phone. "Hold on, Richard. Some guy's bothering me," before addressing Carlos, her tone dripping with dismissal, each word a blade. "I'll be done in a minute," she said, waving a manicured hand, her nails catching the light. "Just leave it." Carlos's jaw tightened, his patience fraying like a worn rope. He'd heard that line before, the casual arrogance of those who saw his badge as a suggestion, not authority, his uniform as a mark of inferiority. "Ma'am," he said, his voice firmer, his eyes locking onto hers, "this isn't a request. You're causing a blockage, and it's a safety issue. Move the car now, or I'll have to issue a citation." She laughed, a short, incredulous sound that cut through the hum of engines, her eyes raking over Carlos's uniform like it was an insult to her presence. "Do you know who I am?" she said, her voice low, cutting, each word a challenge wrapped in silk. "I don't have time for this nonsense. Do your job somewhere else, and let me finish my call." The words hit like a slap, their venom sharpened by the crowd forming nearby, shoppers pausing with their Bloomingdale's bags, a valet driver watching from the curb, Miguel hovering at the gate with a wary look. Carlos's pulse quickened, his years of swallowing insults. Nobody, rent-a-cop, lowlife, boiling to the surface, a fire he'd kept banked for too long. He'd been invisible to people like her, his badge a target for their scorn. But he wasn't invisible tonight, not in his lot, not on his watch. "I don't care who you are," he snapped, his voice rising, loud enough to draw gasps from the onlookers, his flashlight trembling in his grip. "This is my job, and you're breaking the rules. Move the damn car right now, or I'm calling the tow truck, and you can deal with that." The lot fell silent, the blare of horns and chatter replaced by the crackle of Carlos's radio, the distant hum of the mall's holiday music. The woman's face hardened, her lips curling into a smirk, as if his defiance amused her, a chess move she hadn't anticipated but welcomed. "Fine," she said, her voice cold as steel, her eyes never leaving his, a glint of something, respect, perhaps, flickering in their depths. "Do what you have to do." She raised the window with a soft whir, grabbed her purse, and stepped out, her heels clicking on the asphalt as she strode toward the mall's entrance, leaving the Range Rover where it was, a gleaming monument to her indifference, its presence a dare. Carlos stood frozen, his clipboard trembling, the crowd's whispers abuzz in his ears. Who does he think he is? She's gonna get him fired. Miguel jogged over, his face tense, his voice low. "Yo, Carlos, you sure about this? That lady looks like she could make trouble." Carlos shook his head, his jaw clenched, his pride stinging like a fresh wound. "She's not above the rules," he said, pulling out a citation pad, his pen scratching as he wrote the ticket, each stroke a defiance. He slapped the yellow slip under the SUV's wiper, the paper stark against the black paint, and radioed Juan, the tow driver, his voice steady but his heart racing. "Get ready to hook this one," he said. "No exceptions." The crowd dispersed, some nodding in approval, others muttering about overzealous guards, their footsteps fading into the mall's glow. Carlos stood by the SUV, his flashlight beam cutting through the gathering dusk, his resolve a shield against the doubt creeping in. Had he gone too far? Was she someone who could end his career with a phone call? He pushed the thoughts aside, his mother's voice echoing in his mind. "Trabaja con orgullo, mijo. Nadie puede quitarte eso." Work with pride, son. No one can take that away. He'd done his job, upheld the rules, and that was enough. Or so he thought, as the neon lights flickered, casting long shadows across the lot. The next morning, Carlos arrived at the mall early, his uniform pressed, his badge polished, but his stomach churned with unease, a knot that had kept him awake through the night. The incident had followed him home to his Hialeah apartment, a modest one-bedroom where the hum of reggaeton from the neighbors seeped through the walls. He'd tossed and turned, replaying the woman's smirk, her cutting words. "Do you know who I am?" Each one a jab at his pride, his place in a world that often looked past him. He'd told his mom, Sophia, over dinner, her eyes narrowing as she stirred a pot of arroz con pollo, the aroma filling their small kitchen. "You did right, Carlos," she'd said, her voice firm, her hands steady despite years of scrubbing floors. "People like that need to learn respect. Don't let them scare you." Her words had bolstered him, but they couldn't quell the fear that he'd crossed a line, that his defiance might cost him the job that paid his rent, kept his mom's medical bills in check. At the security office, a concrete bunker behind the mall's loading docks, Carlos clocked in, nodding to Miguel, who was sipping coffee, his radio crackling with morning chatter. "You hear anything about that lady?" Miguel asked, his brow furrowed, his voice low. "Looked like she could make trouble, man." Carlos shrugged, forcing a grin, his hands steady as he checked his flashlight. "Let her try," he said, but his confidence was a veneer, thin and brittle, the dread pooling in his gut like oil. The dread solidified when Rachel Torres, the mall's manager, called him to her office, her voice clipped over the radio, a tone that brooked no delay. Rachel, a 38-year-old Mexican-American with a reputation for fairness, was a rare ally, her no-nonsense demeanor a buffer against the mall's corporate politics. But her summons felt like a guillotine, and Carlos walked through the mall's polished halls, past glittering storefronts and towering Christmas trees. His boots echoing on marble, his heart pounding like a drum. Had the woman complained? Was he facing a write-up, a suspension, or, God forbid, termination? He knocked on Rachel's door, his clipboard a shield, and entered, the air-conditioned office a stark contrast to the humid lot, the scent of coffee and paper grounding him. Rachel sat behind her desk, her dark hair pulled into a tight bun, her glasses perched on her nose, a laptop open before her, its screen casting a blue glow. "Sit, Carlos," she said, her expression unreadable, a faint crease in her brow that set his nerves jangling. He sat, his hands clasped, his uniform suddenly feeling too tight, the badge on his chest a weight. "You made waves last night," Rachel said, leaning back, her fingers tapping the desk, her voice measured but heavy with implication. "That woman you ticketed, the one you threatened to tow, that was Diana Morales, president of Horizon Retail Group and our biggest shareholder, owns 30% of Palm Grove Mall." Carlos's stomach lurched, his face flushing, the room tilting as if the floor had dropped beneath him. "Dios mío," he whispered, his voice barely audible, his hands gripping the chair's arms, knuckles whitening. "Rachel, I didn't know." She was blocking the lane, ignoring me, acting like, "I'm sorry, Rachel raised a hand, cutting him off, a smile breaking through her stern facade, her eyes glinting with something like amusement, a rare crack in her armor. "Hold on, Carlos, she's not here to fire you. Read this." She turned the laptop, revealing an email from Diana Morales, subject line, "Security Incident Report, VIP Lot." Carlos leaned forward, his breath shallow, his eyes scanning the text, each word a shockwave that rewrote the narrative of the previous night. "Rachel, last night I conducted an anonymous visit to test the VIP Lot's protocols and encountered your security guard, Carlos Rivera. He enforced the parking rules with unwavering resolve, despite my less-than-cooperative response. His commitment to fairness, even under pressure, is commendable. I'd like to meet him to discuss our security operations. Consider him for a supervisory role. He has the integrity to lead. Diana Morales." Carlos blinked, the words blurring as he reread them, his shock giving way to a cautious relief, a warmth spreading through his chest like sunlight after a storm. "She's not mad?" he said, his voice small, his hands unclenching, the chair no longer a vice. Rachel laughed, a sharp, bright sound that filled the office, her glasses slipping slightly as she shook her head. "Mad? She's impressed, Carlos. Says you're the kind of employee we need more of, someone who doesn't bend for anyone, not even her. She's coming by tomorrow to talk. Don't mess this up, okay?" Carlos nodded, his mind reeling, the weight of the moment settling over him like a heavy coat, warm and grounding. He left the office, his boots lighter on the marble, the mall's glitter no longer a taunt but a stage, its lights a promise rather than a mockery. Diana Morales, a retail titan who could have crushed him with a single call, had seen him, not as a rent-a-cop, but as a man of principle, a leader waiting to emerge. The thought was dizzying, a spark that ignited something he hadn't felt in years. Possibility, raw and uncharted. The next day, Diana arrived at the mall's administrative wing, her designer dress swapped for a tailored charcoal pantsuit, her blonde hair sleek, her presence commanding as she stepped into Rachel's office, a leather portfolio in hand. Carlos waited outside, his uniform pressed to perfection, his badge polished until it gleamed, his heart pounding like a drum in a salsa band. He'd spent the night replaying the confrontation, her smirk, his defiance, the crowd's whispers, wondering how a moment of anger had led to this. A summons that felt like a crossroads. His mom, Sophia, had hugged him tightly, her eyes misty over their morning café con leche. "You stood your ground, mijo," she'd said, her voice thick with pride. "That's who you are, always has been." Now as he knocked and entered, the weight of her words steadied him, a lifeline in the storm of nerves. Diana sat across from Rachel, her green eyes sharp but warm, a smile softening her features, no trace of the icy dismissal from the lot. "Mr. Rivera," she said, standing, her handshake firm, her voice carrying the faintest trace of a Cuban accent, a nod to shared roots that caught Carlos off guard. "You made quite an impression out there." Carlos swallowed, his throat dry, his hands clasped behind his back to hide their tremor. "Miss Morales," he said, his voice steady despite the nerves, his accent grounding him. "I'm sorry for raising my voice. I didn't know who you were. I was just trying to keep the lot safe, make sure everyone follows the rules." She raised a hand, her smile widening, a glint of respect in her eyes that made his chest tighten. "No apologies, Carlos," she said, sitting, gesturing for him to join her, her portfolio resting on the table like a contract waiting to be signed. "You did your job, and you did it well. Most people would have backed down, seen my car, my attitude, and let it slide. You didn't. You stood your ground, and that's rare, rarer than you know." He blinked, caught off guard by her candor, her lack of the arrogance he'd braced for, the cold superiority he'd faced in the lot. Thank you," he said, his voice soft, his shoulders relaxing, the chair no longer a cage. "I just believe in fairness. The rules are there for a reason, for everyone." "Exactly," Diana said, leaning forward, her eyes studying him with a quiet intensity, like a chess player sizing up a worthy opponent. "I test my properties anonymously, staff, systems, operations. I parked badly to see how you'd handle it, and you showed me something I don't see often: integrity under pressure. Let's talk about the lot. What's working, what's not? Be honest. I can take it." The meeting stretched 40 minutes, Carlos's nerves giving way to a quiet confidence as he shared his observations, his voice growing steadier with each point. "The lot's layout was a mess," he said, with unclear signage leading to constant disputes. The valet team was understaffed during peak hours, forcing guards to play traffic cop. Surveillance cameras missed key blind spots, and the tow process was too slow, letting violators slip away. Diana listened, jotting notes in her portfolio, her questions incisive but encouraging, her demeanor that of a collaborator, not a boss perched on a throne. "You've got a sharp eye," she said, closing her notebook, her smile broadening. "We're restructuring security across our properties. More staff, better tech, tighter protocols. I want you on the management team, supervising the lot, training guards, reporting to Rachel. It comes with a raise and a bonus. Can you handle it?" Carlos nodded, his chest tight with a mix of pride and disbelief, a smile breaking through the tension, his eyes meeting hers without flinching. "Yes, ma'am," he said, his voice firm, the words carrying the weight of a vow. "I can handle it." The weeks that followed were a transformation, a seismic shift that Carlos felt in his bones, as if the ground beneath him had steadied after years of quaking. As security supervisor, he took to the role with a fierce determination, his presence a steady anchor in the holiday chaos. He redesigned the lot's layout, adding bold signage, VIP only, no exceptions, and dedicated lanes that cut gridlock by 20%, the flow of cars smoother, the horns quieter. He trained new guards with a patience honed by years of mentoring his younger cousins, his lessons grounded in fairness and vigilance. Check every plate, question every excuse, but always listen. The lot ran like a well-oiled machine. Incidents dropped, and his team, Miguel, Juan, and the new hires, looked to him with a respect that warmed his core, a quiet pride that felt new and hard-earned. Carlos's confidence grew, his uniform no longer a symbol of limitation, but a badge of leadership, its navy fabric a canvas for his authority. He began documenting his ideas in a worn notebook, surveillance upgrades to cover blind spots, a staff wellness program to combat burnout, a mobile app for real-time parking updates, letting drivers check spaces before circling like sharks. Rachel noticed, pulling him aside one afternoon in her office, her glasses glinting with approval as she handed him a revised contract, the salary bump a number that made his breath catch. "You're proving Diana right," she said, her voice warm, a rare smile softening her edges. "She's been asking about you. Says you're management material, maybe even regional someday." Diana became an occasional presence, her visits a mix of oversight and camaraderie, her tailored suits a contrast to the denim jacket of their first encounter, a reminder of the test that had changed everything. Their conversations ranged from parking logistics to Carlos's dreams, a vision he'd buried under years of routine, a security firm of his own, one that prioritized fair wages and diverse hires, a legacy for Hialeah, for his community. Think big, she told him one day, inspecting a new sign he'd designed, its bold letters cutting through the lot's neon haze. Start with a small contract, a strip mall, a warehouse. Build your name, Carlos. You've got the chops. Carlos took her advice to heart, his Hialeah apartment transforming into a hub of ambition, the sagging couch now a planning station. He enrolled in a security management course funded by his bonus, his evenings filled with textbooks and proposals, his laptop glowing with business plans, each spreadsheet a step toward something greater. He sketched logos on napkins, Rivera Security Solutions, the letters sharp and proud, imagining a firm that would serve communities like his, where guards weren't nobodies, but pillars, respected and valued. His mom, Sophia, visited one Sunday, her eyes misty as she hugged him tightly, the aroma of her café con leche filling the room. "You're making us proud, mijo," she said, her voice thick, her hands trembling slightly from years of labor. "Always knew you were meant for more." One evening, as the mall's lights glittered against Miami's dusk, Carlos stood at the VIP lot's entrance, his clipboard light in his hand, his gaze sweeping the orderly rows, the spaces marked, the rules upheld. The holiday rush was easing, the lot a testament to his work, each car in its place, each driver following the signs he'd fought to install. He caught his reflection in a Tesla's chrome, the man staring back no longer just a guard, a Hialeah kid scraping by. But Carlos Rivera, a leader, a dreamer, a force unfolding. The city pulsed around him, its rhythm a reminder that every stand, every rule enforced held the power to shift a life. Carlos smiled, his boots firm on the gravel, his heart full, the neon lights casting a glow that felt like a promise. He'd spoken his truth, defied the smirk of privilege, and the world had answered, not with punishment, but with a path forward, a legacy waiting to be built.